There are a lot of really great names in this NHL entry-level draft, but today we're talking about the best one. We've got Will Scouch here to talk all about Glev Trikozov on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you all of the news, the stories, the trials, tribulations, the joys, the agonies of your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Today, we're going to be talking about potential future Blue Jackets, though, and we're going to be doing another prospect profile with Will Scouch of Scouching. So before I get into that, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and also on YouTube. So if you're not watching on video, then maybe you should be. And if you are watching on video, I appreciate you. If you're not watching on video, I also appreciate you. But I appreciate you more if you're watching me on YouTube. So do with that what you will. And I will just get right into my conversation with Will. So it's getting closer and closer to the draft, and I still really have no idea who the Blue Jackets are going to take with either of their picks. And I don't know if anyone that isn't Jarmo Kekalainen knows. So I thought, hey, let's sneak a couple more draft profiles under the wire before everyone heads to Montreal in about 3 weeks. And so I've got a friend of the show, Will Scouch, on to chat some more about prospects, because he is much smarter than me and knows more things about prospects than I do.
Good afternoon, Jay. How are things? I appreciate the kind words, but even if I don't fully support them, but I hope I can help.
Well, I feel like I know a lot more about prospects even now than when I started doing these, and you and many other prospect guys have been kind enough to use very small words to explain things to me. But
Good to know.
I thought today we could talk about a guy who I didn't know was a real guy for quite some time, and then had the brilliant experience of introducing another Locked On host to as who I think has the best name in this entry draft so far. So I'm going to talk about Glev Trikozov today, who I feel like you have been championing quite a bit in this draft.
Yeah, he's a guy who I agree I did not really know much about coming into the year. I had seen him a little bit in the off season. Really liked what I saw of him in the MHL last summer or last spring into the end of the year. And the more and more I watched him, the more and more he just kind of moved up my board. It's like, it was the kind of practice of, why don't I have this guy ranked ahead of player X? And then it's like, well, why don't I have this guy ranked ahead of player Y? And then why don't, and it just kind of, next thing you know, he's one of the top 10 guys for me in the draft. So he's an interesting one. I've watched him a lot because relative to what some people think, I feel a little insane. Like, I just feel like I really need to make absolutely sure that I think I know what I'm talking about with him. So I've watched a lot of him this year, and so I remain pretty steadfast, and we're getting close to crunch time, and we'll see how things work out.
Yeah, for sure. So what do you see when you watch Trikozov play? What should fans expect when he steps on the ice?
One of the in terms of the best one of the best offensive toolkits, I think, out there in terms of driving up the ice with speed with the puck on his stick, really good puck control at high speed, extremely good release on his wrist shot, and sense of space for empty space in the offensive zone to get one-timers off. Can also make plays in the offensive zone. Just a player that plays with a lot of pace, a little unproven against better competition, but I really thought that he would have played more at the men's level. He started the year in the VHL, which was really impressive. I mean, he's about a month away from 2023 eligibility, and for a guy that young to be playing pro hockey in Russia, even though it's not the KHL, is impressive. He just wasn't really getting a ton of results. He wasn't really getting a ton of offense. I tracked one game of him at that level, and the only offense his team generated with him on the ice came off of his stick, which was kind of funny to me. But it was very, very limited offense. And I think that the strength and the pace of the men's league level was a little bit much for him, but he only played like 7 or 8 games there and then went right back to junior. And ever since, he's just been shooting the lights out. So he's a guy that I think on paper right now, he's more marked by his goal scoring. He's scored a lot of goals this year playing for that Omsk junior team. But I think there's a playmaker there as well. He got better and more comfortable sort of in that role as well over the course of the year. Just an all-around offensive guy that I think has a lot of the tools and the youth that gives him the runway to sort of develop into something more. And with Russian players especially, you get a really long runway to watch him develop. If you're not really concerned if he takes 3-4 years to get there, but I think if you are patient and trust Omsk's program to keep sort of challenging him and getting him higher on their list and higher on their teams, then yeah, I think there's a lot to like there. So just a really, really, really talented all-around offensive player that I think brings a lot of different tools that I think are projectable that could really help him down the road. He's not perfect, which we can go over as well, but I think he's a player that at the very least belongs in the first round. And if you belong in the first round this year in 2022, you could go anywhere really, if you ask me. So yeah, we'll see what happens with him.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to talk about, and I definitely want to talk about, like, again, I hate using the term red flags, but like maybe things to worry about in his game. But I wanted to talk about just kind of the draft in general, because I was talking to Tony Ferrari about this a little bit last week, and basically I was like, is it confirmation bias or is this draft weird? In terms of, I feel like, and we talked about this a little bit off mic, I feel like I look at a guy and then I'm like, oh, okay, I know where he's going to go. And then they release a new set of draft rankings and he's dropped like 20 points or he's jumped up. Like, Cutter Gauthier kind of came out of nowhere for me. I feel like Brad Lambert was ranked like the second best prospect right up until like literally until February of this year. And then now they're like, well, maybe he won't even go in the first round. Like, what the heck is up with the draft this season?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I think there's a lot of. So first off, I don't think the very, very top end is as strong as prior years. So I think that you've got a bunch of guys at the top that might not be that even Matthew Beniers, Owen Power level prospect, but maybe you've got a couple of, I would say, Brant Clarks. You've got a couple of Mason McTavish's maybe level guys at the top, and I really like Mason McTavish. But you might just have that kind of guy at the top end this year. Beyond that, guys like Slavkovsky and Juracek and Nemec, to me, they're good prospects, but I feel like those guys maybe peter out in a team's middle six, like Slavkovsky, second, third line, probably second line, Nemec, Juracek, second pair. I don't think either of those guys are likely to be top pair guys. Depends, but we'll see. And then it just kind of flattens out. Like usually in any given draft, there's a point where things just sort of flatten out, and it's like, well, you kind of take who you want. For me, last year, that was kind of around approaching 20. Like on my list, once you get to around 20, it's like, yeah, I could see a lot of guys going around that range, and that's kind of what happened. This year, that starts at like 8 or something, where it's like, and the guys at the top end of that group for me are guys like Matthew Savoy, Glev Trikozov, Joakim Kamel, and those guys to me are guys where when I see them playing really well, they could be some of the more dynamic, exciting players to come out of this draft. But there's issues with them that require development, and they're issues specifically where if they don't come far enough, it could limit their NHL impact as a whole. Like it just might not work out for them. As you draft a guy 7th overall, then you look back in 10 years and go, how did anyone have this guy 7th overall? And it's like, well, sometimes it all just doesn't come together the way you want. And I mean, I also feel like, I think that in the scouting community as a whole, there seems to be a lot more people involved and a lot more people really digging into the details and really sort of trying to separate one player from another. And before, I feel like there might have been a lot more, people trusting other people's thoughts, or there was a lot more groupthink kind of dynamics out there. And then this year last year too happened as well, but this year seems a lot of different people have a lot of different philosophies, and I think that's coming out as well. So I think that what this year's draft kind of will indicate at the end of the day is what teams are focused on what. Are there teams that maybe have a specific sort of strategy in the draft of like the type of player they're looking for and what they think they can develop? Or is there a team that is just sort of going, I don't really care, let's just take what we believe are the potentially highest upside guys left? Or are there going to be teams that want to play it a little more safe? And I feel like this draft, it'll really expose that kind of line of thinking. So it's a little bit weird because I think on paper there's a lot of players that show good talent in some areas, but other areas are enough of a work in progress that it might limit their NHL upside. But also, I get the feeling that this is also just sort of the scouting community maybe rationalizing the actual value you get out of an NHL draft more. Where it's like, if this guy turns into a third round pick and I picked him, or a third line player and I picked him 27th overall, like generally in the NHL draft, that's a good draft pick. If you get an everyday third line NHL guy that you trust and you can play in the late first round, that's pretty good. It's not great, but it's like it's good. But at the top end of the draft, not everyone is going to score 80 points a season. Not everyone's going to score 90 points a season. If you get 65 points out of a guy like Frank Nazar, I feel like you've done really well. So I feel like coming to terms with that and understanding the very, very minute details that can separate one player to another between different people that could be flipped the other way around for perfectly legitimate reasons, then I think you kind of understand why people are a little bit so questioning of this draft. But I think the biggest issue is that there's a large group of players that starts pretty quickly where it's really, really, really hard to discern between one and the other, and you get all kinds of different results based on what people think.
Coming up in a minute, I've got more of my conversation with Will about Trikozov. But first, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors, and this is a product that I use literally every day. So I started taking AG1 because I was feeling tired all the time. I was having a lot of health issues. I wanted a supplement that was not a million different pills and vitamins. And honestly, I kind of wanted to see what the hype was about. I've been taking it for a couple of months now, and I am a huge fan of AG1. I feel so much better. I have more energy. I just really look forward to having it every morning. So, what is AG1? Well, with one delicious scoop, you are absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. They support gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. Basically, all of the things that you might want to fix about your diet, you can fix with AG1. It's lifestyle friendly. Whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free, AG1 is for you. And it costs you less than $3 a day. So you're investing in your health and it's cheaper than going to Starbucks. So, right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That is it. There's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it even easier for you, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Once again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Before we get back to the episode, I have an important favor to ask you. Here at Locked On, we've put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcasts even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On podcasts. So if you go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey right now, get started, take the survey. It's not going to take you very long. Everyone that completes a survey can qualify for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. So to take our audience survey, once again, that is lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. And I appreciate your help with this. Yeah, we'll get back to Trikozov in just a second because you said something in there that I actually talked a little bit about in Sunday's episode. So we're recording this on Sunday, so I recorded this
Yes.
earlier. And I was doing a season review for Alexander Texier, who's a player I like a lot. And he has taken kind of a slow path to the NHL. He still hasn't played a full season. He's only 22, but he had 11 goals in 36 games this season. So near enough, 24 averaged out against a full season.
Yeah, ish, yeah.
And he was picked basically at the exact midway point of the second round. And I feel like the thing that happens with Texier a lot is Blue Jackets fans are like, wow, this guy is a fourth liner. Why did we waste a second round pick on him? But like, I feel like at this point, if you get even a bottom six guy or a bottom pairing guy out of the second round, like to me, that feels like a success, and especially looking at like the 2017 draft.
Yeah, and the thing that I was talking to someone about this the other day, just about draft strategy in general, and I think people don't really realize how hard it is to find just guys that you can play in the draft. right? Like that really you can play, not guys that you're sort of trying out and it's like, well, I guess we better give them a chance before we like cut them loose. It's like a guy where you're like, let's give them a go. Like they deserve a chance. They've played well enough everywhere else. Like let's give them a long look. Um, and I feel like to do that outside of the first round and have it stick and land is tougher than people might think. And getting, you ideally in your first round, you want a guy that will be that, like for sure. Like you use your first round pick, you pull them up on stage, you give them the jersey, do the photo op. That's a guy you want in that jersey playing in the NHL, right? In this beyond that, getting two players in every draft that can play hundreds of games in the NHL is really, really good. And I think Texier is already up close to that.
Texia, I
Like,
think, is third or fourth in points in this for guys drafted in the second
right.
round.
And
Comtois is ahead of him in Anaheim, and Jason Robertson, who I feel like is going to be one of those guys where we're like, how does
yeah,
he fall to the second round? The answer
yeah.
is small, but he's already basically a point per game, you know?
Yeah, I
So,
mean, and so yeah, Alex Texier's already played 123 games,
yeah.
and I know the Columbus Blue Jackets are kind of like in a rebuild or whatever, but beyond, like, it doesn't really, to me, that doesn't really matter. Like, you just sort of go, okay, but like they're, I mean, it does matter, but you're playing these guys, and I look at Texier, I've always really liked him too. I think that he's still sort of figuring it out. He's still 22. He's got some more runway to go, but yeah, even if he peters out as a bottom six center that plays offensively, like yeah, you can put him out on the power play, like that's fine. If he belongs in that role on a playoff team, which hopefully Columbus will be before too long, then yeah, you've done really well. So it is something to think about because I feel like a lot of I'm never a huge fan of just saying, well, let's play it safe because it's rare outside the first round to land those 200 game guys, um, but yeah, I mean, I think that it's something that people sort of need to refocus on and think about, rethink the draft. Because if you do get two of those guys in every given draft, that's an unbelievable drafting organization. Like generally, you get like one, maybe two. You look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and all the guys they've drafted that just they plug into their lineup and they play like 300 games in their career, and they're not phenomenal, but Pittsburgh still keeps getting to the show and keeps getting into the playoffs and everything with these guys. So
You need depth at the end of the
yeah,
day, and like
eh, yeah.
that's what the draft is, I think, is depth. Like you pick your guy in the first round that hopefully is going to be, a solid piece, a solid core piece, and then you kind of
Mhm.
draft around that.
Yeah.
Which I guess kind of leads into my like a related kind of question. So the Blue Jackets are drafting 6th and 12th. In your opinion, like what should Blue Jackets fans be hoping for with those picks? Obviously, this is a weak
Yeah.
draft, but do you like? And I would say that you want your sixth, like that sixth guy. Ideally, you
Mhm.
want to project him as a top liner, a top line
Yeah.
guy, or a top two defenseman. But
Yep.
12th is where it kind of gets a little bit wobbly. I think. Like, what would you want out of a 12th overall pick?
Uh, well, I mean, I think every year, in that teens range, at least based on how I evaluate the draft every year, it seems like around six is a range where you're gonna get a good prospect. I obviously, you always want a first liner, you always want this, you always want that. But like I look at I have six guys in my first two tiers that I think are a step ahead of this giant group that I talked about earlier. And that's Wright, Cooley, Lambert, Slavkovsky, Juracek, Nemec. And if you're guaranteed a shot at one of those guys. And at six right now it's Simon Nemec for me. And if you get him there, you've got, Columbus has drafted some really good dynamic, defensemen that can carry the puck and move it. And I think that you can't have too many of those guys. And if Nemec can be another one of those guys. You've got Coolemans in the system already. You've got Swazil. I like him a lot more than both of those guys. And I think that when you look at Columbus, it kind of adds, if it's Nemec, I don't think it will be, but if it is, then that's something you can work with. You get a shot at David Juracek. Like he's a little riskier because his injury. I think, he had a bit of trouble in the games I saw post injury where he sort of just wasn't up to speed and he had missed. It was clear he had missed like 5 months of hockey or 4 months of hockey or whatever. Like that's gonna suck for a while. But I wouldn't be too worried based on how he plays. He's just one of these guys where I think you need development. But if he gets to the finish line, you might be looking at one of these like Mikhail Sergachev type second pair guys that, might not be a 25-minute a night, Norris Trophy winner, but, a good 200-foot dude. You're going to get a chance at someone good. And at 12, I think all bets are off. Like someone in that top six, maybe they slip all the way to 12. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. Maybe a guy like Matthew Savoy, teams are spooked about him. and for reasons that are out there. But he might be a guy you snag at 12 and just swing for upside. Or if you want something more reliable, someone like Frank Nazar or Liam Ogren or another one of these sort of hardworking, solid floor guys that you can work with. Maybe you got a third line guy out of that, out of those guys, but there's upside for more, maybe a second liner. But in that range, I guess, to quickly answer your question, is at 12. At 12, you kind of get these guys where there could be something more, right? Like you set your expectations kind of refrained, but you think there's definitely potential for more. And if they hit, then great. But it depends on how you want to play your cards, right? Like especially in this year's draft, you could swing for a lot of upside at 12 and just go full send, or you can sort of play it really safe, or you can find a kind of sit in the middle and go, we accept that there's risk with this player and we think they'll still play, but if they hit, they'll be probably of relatively close value to that guy we picked at 6, which we think we're more confident on. But again, it's about sort of keeping things in perspective.
In a minute, we are going to finish off our conversation with Will about Trikozov. But first, I want to tell you about betonline.net. It is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the Stanley Cup final, Major League Baseball, and of course, UFC, MMA, boxing, all of the fighting. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. I know I've been keeping an eye on the odds for who's going to be winning the Conn Smythe, because the current favorite is Cale Makar, and I think that's neat. So if you want to put some money on Cale Makar winning the Conn Smythe, or you want to pick, I don't know, Nikita Kucherov, or Andrei Vasilevsky, or Nathan McKinnon. Fun fact, all of those guys have less points than Connor McDavid, and he's not even in the final. So, again, do with that information what you will, and head to the website today. That's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Yeah, I feel like Kekalainen is more so than maybe any other GM a very kind of high risk, high reward drafter. Yeah. I feel like his hits have been really good, and then his misses have been kind of a little bit. There's been a couple more misses than I would like in a GM, but I feel like it probably balances out in the end. I want to get back to Trikozov for a little bit though, because he's a guy that I haven't watched too much because it's surprisingly hard to just find the MHL to just watch. But like bits and pieces that I have seen, he looks like, like you said, he can score goals. He can make plays. Like I think he's almost dead even in terms of goals and assists on the season. 23 and 22.
Yeah.
But you also talked a bit about, you've got some not worries, I guess, but like there's some holes in his game, I guess. So what worries you about his game?
Well, I think a big reason why there's such a big spread on him, and I admitted this in the report that I made on my YouTube channel, I can understand why some people are thinking he's a second, third round pick. Because some games when you watch him, it's not there. Like there was a couple of games I was watching him where I'm going, man, like I know you have more in the tank. Like I've seen it happen. Like I think he knows that he's punching below his weight class in the MHL, and just like his second half was a little better than his first half, but I feel like he played like a player who knew he was basically a video game character at that level. Like even in the inconsistency that I saw in him in terms of just I wish I could point to specifics. A lot of it was defensive, but I feel like that got a little better over the course of the year. But just a matter of keeping your feet moving and staying active and engaged in play and anticipating the flow of play rather than sort of waiting it to come to you. And, just being the guy who is reactive. He was very reactive without the puck, but then very proactive some of the time with it. And when he's proactive, that's when he was really something. And I feel like proactive players are the ones that really drive results in the NHL because everybody's proactive. The defensive players, you have to be proactive. The offensive players, you have to be proactive. It's just all proactive. If you're reactive, you're too slow. You're just not, it's in the NHL, it's not going to work. So I always look for players that are with the puck on their stick, especially like very proactive. And at least if they're proactive there, you can bring it defensively and say, look, like you can play more with the puck if you just put in a little more without it. Like it's just you're good enough to make that happen. So with Gleb, it's also part of the reason why I would want him challenged in a men's league a little bit more because yeah, it really felt like when on some nights you'd watch him, or some even just isolated for the, like there was a couple of games I watched for the first two periods, my data set was like not doing a whole lot. And then the third period, they're down 2-1, and he's just like a machine gun, all day, just transporting pucks constantly, setting plays up, taking chances, and then next thing you know, it's 3-2 and they've won. So it's like it's a very strange. He's a very strange player to watch, but we're not really in the business of who like knocking down who is quote unquote lazy or whatever people want to use. It's like finding who the best players are and trying to help them get better. And I look at him and go, look, if he's a guy that's available in the second round, like we were talking before the show, he might be available at 44. Like, would I take him at 12? I could take him at 12, but I think that if it's more likely that you could take a different player at 12, and at 44 he might still be there. That's a big stretch. That's a big gamble. So maybe you could trade down from 12 if you really, really want him. But I think that if you get him in the second round, like even if he doesn't work out, the upside is worth it alone. And you give him some years in Russia to develop. Hopefully he can learn through that inactivity in the men's league level where he might get exposed a little bit more often, get exposed defensively a little more, struggle to create as much offense. It's like, well, this is, learn those lessons, keep getting better and keep getting quicker and keep bringing it defensively, and then you can play more offensively. And that's kind of what makes him special. So we'll see how it goes. I am still a huge fan of him because he pretty much is like you said, he's one of these guys offensively that can kind of do it all. And you can definitely see the wheels turning in the right direction with him. But it's just a matter of some nights you see him, some days you see him, and it's just not the same player, or some periods it's not the same player. And and most coaches don't like when their wingers are literally standing still in the defensive zone watching play go around, and he's been caught doing that for sure on my end. But that's something that, again, like for coaches to fix, like you kind of go to them and be like, look, here's what this player is doing, he can do better, like we know he can do better. So I'm not so worried about that, and maybe that's why I'm so high on him, because I see the talent and I see the output, and I'm going, well, even if those things improve, even with those shortcomings, he's still as good as he was this year at the junior level, especially. So if those things get better, then the already extraordinarily good results will almost certainly get better as well. So that's why I'm not super concerned compared to other people, but I understand why there's this big widespread on him.
Yeah. Is it a case of, and you alluded to it a little bit there, is it a case of he's bored playing that level of hockey? And if you put him in a higher league, suddenly he'll be like, oh, actually, this is not worth my time, but I feel like you see that a lot with like guys that aren't old enough for the AHL but aren't good enough for the NHL, and so they get sent back to the OHL or the WHL or whatever, and they just like they tear it up, but they also look super bored all the time. I think Dylan Strome was a big one for me. Clearly too good for the OHL, but it couldn't stick in the NHL,
Yeah, and I think that might factor in as well. Like, it really surprised me that they didn't at least call him up again, and give him another run at the men's league level the further along the year went. But I mean, look, Russian hockey teams and developing their own young players, it's a wild card. Like, some teams don't really seem to mind playing young players. Other teams just refuse to do it unless they're absolutely certain that the player is a needle mover. And I mean, Gleb had some good moments in the men's league when I saw him, and some, moments where he looked like a 17-year-old playing against 30-year-olds. And again, he's also very, very young. Like, he's pretty close to a 2023 eligible. And I look at him and I go, yeah, like you can tell. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if I was in an interview with him and I'd ask him, like, be honest, like, we're not going to like throw you down our draft board, but be honest. Were you bored? Were you like checked out, wanting to play, more? He wasn't even playing that many minutes at the MHL level. Like, his ice time, I think he was playing like strong second line minutes, but he wasn't playing like 20 minutes a night like some 17-year-olds that are this level in the MHL have before. Like, Danila Yurov was playing quite a few minutes at 5-on-5. And Gleb just wasn't really getting those minutes. Like, some nights he was playing like 10 or 11 minutes at 5-on-5, which is not very much. So, and he's still scoring like over a point per game, which is nuts. So I don't know. I get it. I think, and again, like, if I were a team, I would want him to say it himself, right? Because it's pretty clear that he was showing some kind of inconsistency. And if it was like, if he says, no, that's just how I play, then I'm kind of concerned, because I'm going, well, this probably won't work. But if he's sitting there going like, well, yeah, I played men's league hockey and then they took me and sent me back to junior and I played really, really well and I got stuck there. So I don't know, what am I supposed to do? And it's like, okay, well, sure, fair enough. I don't 100% like it, but fair enough. So yeah, I kind of would understand that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So let's finish off with a little bit of speculation, I guess. You've talked before about how much you like Columbus's development system. Does Trikozov fit into that system? Do you think he could find a place in Columbus? Is that a team that he could have success on, do you think?
Well, I think it's interesting because Columbus is one of the teams that generally I think could happen. I'm not sold on it. The only real sort of thread that I'm pulling on is that not too long ago they shocked the world and picked Yegor Chinikov off of the same program in the first round. And like I'm positive that relationship still exists. Maybe Omsk is mad because Chinikov left. Maybe they're just like, why would we? Columbus took one of our best young players. Why would we ever give them any more information ever? But I don't know. I find that hard to believe. Like, I mean, Chinikov could very well just go right back to Omsk in a couple of years if he's not feeling the NHL. I mean, I was very surprised that Chinikov came over as quickly as he did, but never mind. Like, they're not afraid of drafting Russians. They've drafted at least one every year for the last, oh my goodness, like since 2015, since 2014 was the last year they didn't draft a Russian. And a lot of their Russians are playing in the NHL, like Gavrikov, Chinikov. They drafted Vitaly Abramov, but we don't talk about him much. Daniil Tarasov is on his way to the NHL, and he's played in the NHL. So they're not afraid of Russians, and they're not afraid to play them. So I think it's possible. And I know that Yarmo is not afraid to think outside the box a little bit. And to some people, thinking outside the box means Glev Trikozov. But I don't think it's that far outside the box. So yeah, I mean, I think they're a team that comes to mind. The only other one that I can really feel relatively confident in saying maybe about is Toronto, just because they have a lot of players that they've brought over from Omsk in that program, and they've been going back and forth quite a lot. And they deal with the agent that represents Trikozov quite a bit, who represents a lot of Russian players that Toronto's brought over. So we'll see. But I think it's possible. I'd say I'd be more comfortable putting money on him landing in Columbus than a lot of other teams in the NHL, even if it's at 44. If it's not at 12, 6 might be a little high, but 12 is around where I'd go. Yeah, you know what? Take the chance. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I feel like especially, and this is something that I was talking to Tony about this as well, is the Blue Jackets, once they've picked 12, that'll be their 5th first-round pick over the last 2 years. And I feel like, especially in a draft like this, like, get weird, get crazy with it. We've seen that Kekalainen clearly has a list that no one else has, because I like when they drafted Chinikov. I feel like we've talked about this before. I was like, who's this guy? I'd done a ton of research on Hendrix Lapierre because I assumed that's who they were going to pick, and then I just threw it all out the window. So if there was anyone who was like, yeah, we're going to take Trikozov at 6, and it would be Kekalainen. I very much would not be surprised if they did the Chinikov thing. And
I'd pass out. I'd pass out. I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. It'd be hilarious.
I am gonna hit. And that's kind of all I've got for you today. Tomorrow we're going to be continuing our prospect week. We've got another conversation with Will Scouch about Owen Pickering, who is a WHL defenseman out of Swift Current. And we're also going to talk goalies, because there's no goalies in this draft. Or there's no first-round goalies, I think. And I thought that was weird. So I asked Will why. So some Pickering talk, some general WHL talk, and most importantly, some goalie talk is all coming up tomorrow on Locked on Blue Jackets. And I've been Jeff Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. If you're watching on YouTube, it's down here at the bottom of the screen. And you can find Locked on Blue Jackets on Twitter as well at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And thank you once again for making this your first listen of the day, every day. Locked on Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms. And my dog is making a noise behind me. So we're going to sign the episode off there. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.